I never thought I would end up spying on my own child. Honestly, it wasn't even meant to be spying. Things like this usually start off as something harmless, something with good intentions, and then they spiral into something much darker. For me, it all started with a security camera. That camera was supposed to give me peace of mind. It wasn't meant to catch secrets or bring up painful truths. It was just supposed to be a silent red light, quietly watching over my empty house while I spent a couple of weeks away. You see, I had gone to visit my sister down in Tampa, after my husband Mark passed away 8 months ago. I had been living alone in our big old colonial house up in Connecticut. I'm 62 now, and the house feels way too large without him. It's quiet most of the time, but the quiet isn't comforting. Every creak of the floorboards, every brush of tree branches against the sidings, suddenly, all of it started to make me jumpy. I couldn't help it. When I finally caved and called a security company, they promised me I'd feel better. It's easy, they said. You can check in on your home from your phone anytime you like. Set it up once, and you won't even think about it again. And for a while, they were right. The little blinking light gave me comfort. And eventually I forgot it was even there, at least until day 6 of my trip. It was late afternoon, and I was sitting at my sister's house, bored. I'd already played with her dogs, helped her cook, and flipped through more magazines than I cared to count. Something about that empty stretch of time made me restless. Then I started wondering about stupid little things, like had I unplugged the coffee maker? Did I leave the back porch light on? Was the garden hose still running? That worry, combined with boredom, is what made me reach for my phone. I tapped the security app, half expecting to see nothing but still rooms and empty hallways. But what came up on that screen made my heart skip a beat. There were 2 people inside my house. At first, fear surged through me. My hand tightened on the phone, and I almost dropped it. But then I looked closer. It wasn't burglars. It was my son, Michael, and his wife, Anna. They were using the emergency key I'd given them. Relief washed over me. I had asked Michael to stop by and check on the house while I was away. He promised he would, and clearly he was keeping his word. I felt a wave of comfort, almost pride, that he was being responsible. But the relief didn't last. They didn't head for the kitchen to water the plants, and they didn't grab the pile of mail from the counter like I thought they would. Instead, they walked quickly, moving with a strange purpose through the living room. Their voices were hushed, almost too low for the tiny microphone to catch. But when I leaned closer, I could hear enough. "I already checked upstairs," Anna said, her voice tight. "It has to be in his office." Michael answered, his tone serious. "Mum never goes in there anymore. Not since the funeral." And then they walked down the hall toward my husband's office, the one room in the whole house I had left untouched since the day Mark died. It was like a shrine to him. I couldn't bring myself to box up his things, couldn't change a single thing inside. The thought of my son and daughter-in-law sneaking in there twisted my stomach. I turned up the volume, staring hard at my phone screen. What could they possibly want in there? 15 long minutes passed before they came back into view. And when they did, everything about them had changed. Michael's face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. He was holding a leather folder that I recognized instantly. It was Mark's. Anna looked nervous, glancing again and again toward the windows as if someone might be watching. "She can never know about this," Michael muttered, his voice clearer this time. "If these accounts are traced back to Mom's name, she'll go to prison." "Dad set her up perfectly," Anna whispered back. "I don't understand. How could he do this to her? 39 years of marriage, and he makes her the fall guy." I froze. My whole body went cold. Fall guy, prison. My mind raced. What were they talking about? Then, as if things weren't bad enough, Michael suddenly looked up. His eyes locked right onto the camera. "Wait," he said sharply. "The camera's on. The light is red." Anna slapped her hand over her mouth. "You said she wouldn't be checking." "She never checks anything like this unless I set it up." And then the feed cut out. The screen went black. My heart pounded as I tapped desperately at the app, trying to reconnect. But the password no longer worked. Someone, most likely my own son, had shut me out of my own system. I sat there in my sister's guest room, staring at the dead screen, my phone shaking in my hands. Questions spun in my head so fast I could barely keep up. What accounts were they talking about? Why would my husband have set me up for prison? What on earth was hidden in that office of his? Mark had been a respected financial advisor. He was careful, cautious, almost boring in how proper he was. We never lived lavishly, but we were comfortable. Between his income and Minai was a high school librarian before I retired. We always had enough. There was never any hint of something shady. Never. And yet, the phone rang in my hand, so suddenly I nearly dropped it. An unknown number flashed on the screen. My heart jumped. Maybe it was Michael. Maybe he was going to explain. Dot answered. "Hello?" The voice on the other end wasn't his. It wasn't Anna's either. It wasn't even normal. The voice was filtered, low, altered, like someone was deliberately disguising it. "Stop watching the recordings," the voice said. "For your own safety, forget what you saw." A shiver ran down my spine. "Who is this?" "Michael." "Your son can't protect you if you keep digging," the voice warned. "Neither of you understands what Mark was involved in. The less you know, the safer you'll be." My throat went dry. "I don't understand. There are documents," the voice continued, "signed with your name. Transactions worth millions. Enough to put you in federal prison for 20 years. Your husband made sure of that." Then the line went dead. I sat there in silence, my ears ringing, the words echoing in my mind. Millions. Prison. My husband. I tried calling Michael immediately, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Same with Anna's. I tried logging back into the camera app, but my password had been changed. No matter what I did, I couldn't get back in. None of this made sense. It didn't fit the man I had loved for nearly 4 decades. And yet, deep inside, I felt something shift, a sliver of doubt I couldn't ignore. I booked the first flight back home. My sister begged me not to cut my trip short. Not to panic over something I didn't understand, but I couldn't listen. As the plane taxied down the runway, my phone buzzed with a new text. The number was blocked. It read, "Don't go home. They're watching the house. Mark didn't die of a heart attack. He made sure you'd take the fall for everything." I stared at those words, my whole body trembling. Mark didn't die of a heart attack. But I had been there. I had seen him at the hospital, cold and still. I had signed the papers. I had stood by his casket, hadn't I? The plane lifted into the sky, but my stomach felt like it was dropping. One awful question burned in my mind, heavier than all the rest. After 39 years of marriage, how well had I really known my husband, Mark? The taxi pulled into my driveway at 9:47 that night. From the window, I could see my house standing there, just as I had left it, porch light glowing. Flower beds trimmed neatly, the American flag swaying gently in the still summer air. But even though nothing had changed on the outside, something deep inside me knew that everything was different. "Do you want me to wait while you go in, ma'am?" the driver asked, looking nervously at the darkened windows. "Just to make sure everything's fine." For a moment, I almost said yes. I wanted someone with me, someone who could stand there and prove I wasn't imagining things. But I quickly shook my head. I pressed a few extra bills into his hand and forced a smile. No, thank you. My son is expecting me. It was a lie, but one I needed. This was something I had to face on my own. The front door opened smoothly with my key, just like always. But as soon as I stepped inside, I noticed something strange. The air didn't smell the same. There was a faint trace of perfume sweet, powdery, but it wasn't mine. And it wasn't Anna's either. I froze, standing motionless in the foyer, straining to listen. The house made its usual settling sounds, the soft creaks and groans I'd always known. But this time, those sounds didn't comfort me. They felt heavy, threatening, like the house itself was holding a secret. I switched on lights as I moved through each room, my pulse quickening. The living room was untouched. The dining room, the same as I'd left it. Then I stepped into the kitchen. That's when I saw it. A coffee mug sitting in the sink. A fresh lipstick stain on the rim. Not mine, not Anna's shade either. Someone else had been here. My skin prickled. Slowly, I turned toward the hallway. Mark's office door was ajar. I hadn't opened that door in 8 months, not once since the funeral. I had left it closed like a museum, every piece of his life frozen in time. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open. My fingers brushed the wall, fumbling for the light switch. The sight that met me knocked the air from my lungs. The office was wrecked. File cabinets were hanging open, folders thrown everywhere across the floor. Desk drawers had been yanked out, their linings ripped apart. Books had been swept from shelves in messy piles. Even the painting that had hung behind Mark's desk, the one he'd spent too much money on years ago, was gone. In its place, a wall safe I never even knew existed stood wide open and empty. This wasn't random vandalism. No teenager breaking in. No burglar searching for jewelry. This was careful, methodical. Whoever had been here knew exactly what they were looking for. Before I could even catch my breath, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text. The same blocked number as before. It read, "They didn't find what they were looking for, but they'll be back." Check the loose floorboard under his desk chair. The hair rose on my arms. How did this person know? Were they inside the house, watching me now? Dropping to my knees, I shoved Mark's leather desk chair aside and ran my fingers across the floorboards. Near the back wall, one of them gave a little when I pressed down. My breath caught. Digging my nails into the edge, I pried it up. The board lifted icily, and beneath it was a hollow space. Inside was a single manila envelope. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was one sheet of paper. A bank statement. From a bank I had never heard of. In the Cayman Islands. The account was in my name. The balance over $7 million. I stared at the numbers, my stomach twisting. My name, my forged signature. But I had never signed this, never even heard of this account. Yet the handwriting looked exactly like mine. I dropped heavily into Mark's chair, the paper trembling in my hands. My husband, the man I trusted for nearly 4 decades, had created an account in my name. $7 million. From where? How? We lived comfortably, but never like that. Not $7 million comfortably. And then I heard the front door opening, closing. I froze, clutching the paper against my chest, terrified. Footsteps moved through the foyer. A voice called out, "Mom." It was Michael. Relief shot through me, but just as quickly, suspicion followed. Michael and Anna had been in this very office days ago. They knew something. In here, I called back. Trying to keep my voice steady, Michael walked into the office, his eyes widening at the sight of the destruction. His face shifted from surprise to alarm to something else. Fear, Jesus, he whispered. When did this happen? I was hoping you'd tell me, I replied carefully. Since you and Anna were already here, looking through this very room, his eyes darted to me, then to the open safe. His jaw tightened. You saw the camera, he said flatly. I saw everything, I said. I heard you too. Something about accounts in my name. Something that could send me to prison. Something your father did. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tic he'd had since he was a boy. Mom, he said softly. It's complicated. It's dangerous. You need to pack a bag and come stay with us. Right now, please. I'm not going anywhere, I snapped. Not until you explain. What were you doing in your father's office? What are these accounts? Why did someone ransack this room? And what do you mean your father set me up? His gaze flicked nervously toward the windows. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because, Mom, Dad isn't dead. The room tilted under me. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. That's impossible, I said. I was there. I identified his body. I watched them lower his casket into the ground. Michael shook his head, his face pale. You identified a body. But it wasn't Dad. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Before I could even begin to process his words, headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into my driveway. Michael stiffened, moving quickly to the blinds. They're here, he whispered urgently. We have to go now. Out the back. I'm not leaving my house, I insisted, my voice rising. Not until you explain. Mom, he cut me off, his tone deadly serious. The men outside aren't here to talk. They're here to find what Dad left behind. And they don't care if you're alive when they leave. The doorbell rang, once, loud and sharp, echoing through the house. Please, Mom, Michael begged, his voice cracking. Just this once. Trust me. We have to run. And for the first time in my 62 years, I did something I never thought I'd do. I ran out of my own home, into the night, clutching a document with my forged signature and $7 million I knew nothing about. Michael led me through the garden, across the back fence, and into the woods behind the property. My heart pounded, my breath came in ragged gasps, but one thought burned brighter than all the rest. If Mark wasn't dead, then where had he been for the last 8 months? And what kind of man fakes his death, frames his wife, and disappears, leaving her to face the fallout? The kind of man I had been married to for nearly 40 years. The kind of man I was going to find and make pay. Michael's car was parked 2 streets over. He told me he left it there on purpose, a precaution in case anyone was watching the house. At the time, it felt paranoid, but as we slipped through the neighbors' yards, moving like trespassers in the dark, I realized he'd been right. We finally reached the car, and he opened the passenger door for me. Buckle up, he said quickly, climbing into the driver's seat. He kept the headlights off until we were far away from our street. I snapped the seatbelt into place with shaking hands, still clutching the Cayman Islands bank statement in my pocket. I stared out the window as familiar houses blurred by in the dark. My whole life felt like it was crumbling. Where are we going? I asked, my voice low. Somewhere safe, he said. Anna's waiting. I turned to him, my voice sharper now. Michael, I want the truth. If you don't start explaining right now, I swear I'll open this door and throw myself out of this car. He glanced at me, clearly trying to gauge whether I meant it. Whatever he saw in my face must have convinced him I wasn't bluffing. He sighed heavily, his grip tightening on the wheel. Okay, he said. The short version is this. About 3 months ago, Anna and I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. It had financial records from Dad's firm. They showed he was running some kind of money laundering scheme. Offshore accounts, fake companies, and all of them had your name on the paperwork. Your signature. My heart pounded. But I never signed anything like that. I know, Mum, he said quickly. The signatures are forged, but they're good, too good. If anyone investigates, they'll think it's you. He made a sharp turn onto the highway. My hands gripped the edge of the seat. I hired a private investigator, he continued. Ex-FBI. His name's Malcolm Grayson. He started digging quietly. What he found. Michael's voice broke for a second. Dad's been stealing money from his clients for years. He set up fake companies, fake accounts, all with your name on them. He was funneling the money through those accounts to hide it. I shook my head violently. No, that's impossible. Your father he was honest, careful. He always followed the rules. He was a good man. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He was a con man, Mum. A damn good one. He fooled all of us. I wanted to argue, to scream at him for saying such a thing. But deep down, I remembered the bank statement in my pocket, the ransacked office, the safe I didn't know existed, and I stayed silent. 2 weeks ago, Michael went on, Grayson found something huge, proof that Dad might still be alive. My breath caught. What did he find? Security footage from a hotel in Chicago, he said. A man who looked exactly like Dad, using the name Thomas Ellison. The footage was from 3 months after his supposed death. My mind reeled. Chicago. Mark had gone there often for business conferences. There's more, Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. Grayson thinks Dad has another family there. A wife, 2 grown kids. The world tilted around me. I pressed my palms hard against the dashboard, trying not to throw up. No, I whispered. That's not possible. We were married since I was 20. He couldn't hide something like that from me. Michael's voice softened. Think about it, Mum. All those conferences. The business trips he said he couldn't miss. He traveled constantly. You never questioned it because you trusted him. Memories flooded back, Mark missing Christmas 3 years in a row, claiming he had year-end meetings that couldn't be postponed. The endless trips. The calls he always took outside because of bad reception. The way he guarded his office like its fortress. I had thought those things were quirks. Now they felt like cracks in a mask. Why would he fake his death? I asked weakly. Because his scheme was falling apart, Michael explained. Some big clients started asking questions, demanding audits. He knew he couldn't keep it hidden forever. So he staged a heart attack, disappeared, and left all the evidence pointing to you. I sat there in silence, the words like knives. But who was buried in that casket? I asked. Michael's jaw tightened. A John Doe, a body from the morgue. The funeral director was paid off. Closed casket, so no one would question it. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. I remembered standing by that casket, crying, believing. I was saying goodbye to the man I had loved for nearly 40 years. And now Michael was telling me that it had all been a lie. We drove, for a long time in silence. Finally, the road turned into gravel. We pulled up to a small cabin nestled among tall pine trees. Anna's car was parked outside. Welcome to Grayson's safe house, Michael said. Shutting off the engine, Anna rushed out to meet us as soon as we stepped inside. She hugged me tightly, whispering, I'm so sorry, Susan. We didn't want you to find out like this. Inside, the cabin was simple but cozy. A wood stove, A small kitchen, 2 bedrooms. But what caught my eye was the far wall. It was covered in photos, documents, index cards, all connected by red string. I moved closer slowly, my eyes scanning the wall. At the center was Mark's photograph, connected to driver's licenses with different names. Off to the side was a picture of a woman about my age, elegant, dark-haired, standing beside him at what looked like a graduation. Catherine Ellison, Anna said quietly, coming to stand beside me. His other wife. They've been married 35 years. They have 2 kids, Tomas Jr. and Rebecca. I stared at the woman who had unknowingly shared my husband for decades. My heart pounded. Did she know about me? Or was she another victim like me? These men who came to the house tonight, I asked, still staring at Catherine's face. Who are they? We think they work for the people Dad was laundering money for, Michael said. Dangerous people. Now they're after the money he disappeared with. I pulled the Cayman bank statement from my pocket and handed it to him. Is this what they want? Michael's eyes widened. Where did you get this? Someone texted me, I said. Told me to check under the floorboard in Dad's office. Anna and Michael exchanged worried glances. That means someone else knows, Anna said softly. Michael nodded. The question is, are they trying to help us? Or manipulate us? I sank onto the couch, exhausted. So what happens now? My husband isn't dead. He's a criminal with another family. Dangerous people think I know where millions are hidden. What do I do? A new voice spoke from the doorway. Now, it said. We find Mark before they find you. I turned. A tall man in his 50s stood there. Salt and pepper hair. Watchful eyes. The kind of stance that told me he'd been in dangerous situations before. Mum, Michael said. This is Malcolm Grayson. The investigator I told you about. Grayson nodded. Mrs. Harris, he said my name, sounding strange in his voice. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Apparently, my whole life has been a lie, I replied bitterly. So these circumstances feel about right. He gave the faintest smile. Your son said you were tough. Good. You're going to need to be. Why? I asked. Because, he said, moving to the wall of evidence, I know where your husband is. And tomorrow we're going to confront him. The next morning, I sat at the small wooden table in the cabin, staring at a cup of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. My hands shook too much. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's face, not the loving husband I remembered, but the stranger who had apparently been living 2 lives. Grayson moved calmly around the cabin, packing equipment into a duffel bag. Surveillance gear, extra phones, things that made my skin crawl, because they reminded me just how dangerous this was. Chicago, he said simply, not looking up from his bag. That's where we're headed. He's there now. I have confirmation. Chicago, I whispered. My throat felt dry. So, he really is alive. Grayson glanced at me, his face unreadable. Alive, living under the name Thomas Ellison, with his other wife, Catherine. And yes, he's still pretending to be the respectable businessman. Attends family events. Goes to his golf club. Donates to charities. He didn't disappear, Mrs. Harris. He just disappeared from you. The words cut deep, but they rang true. I looked over at Michael, who sat across from me. He rubbed his hands over his face, clearly worn down. Anna sat beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. She'd been strong for him, but I could see fear in her eyes too. I don't understand how it's even possible, I said quietly. How can one man live 2 lives like that? For decades. It's not unheard of, Grayson replied. Your husband's job gave him the perfect cover. Travel was expected. Business meetings, client trips, conferences. He could spend 2 weeks with you, 2 weeks with Catherine, and neither of you would think to question it. Michael leaned forward. Mum, remember all the times he said his trips couldn't be rescheduled? How he always said client schedules were fixed. I swallowed hard. I did remember. For years, I'd rearranged our family life around his business trips. Holidays, birthdays, vacations we missed or changed, so many because of his immovable schedule. I remembered Christmases when he'd been gone, claiming year-end audits kept him away. I had believed him, defended him even, and all the while he had been with her. Tears blurred my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Did she know about me? I asked suddenly, staring at the photo of Catherine on the evidence wall. Grayson shook his head. From my surveillance, she believes she's been married to Thomas Ellison for 35 years. She thinks he's alive and well, working, traveling when necessary. She doesn't know about you. She's as much a victim as you are. I stared at the woman's picture, feeling both fury and pity. How many times had I called myself Mark's only wife? How many times had I thought our marriage was solid, special, unshakable? And all along, there was someone else who believed the same thing. So he faked his death as Mark, I said slowly, but kept living as Thomas. Exactly, Grayson said. And now the people he laundered money for are desperate to find him. They think you have it, which is why we have to confront him before they do. My stomach twisted. Confront him? You mean face him? In person? Grayson nodded. Yes, he's the only one who knows where the money is, and that's our only leverage to keep you safe. Anna squeezed my hand gently. We'll be with you. You're not alone in this, but even surrounded by them. I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. 2 hours later, I found myself at the airport with a small borrowed suitcase, going through security. Everything felt surreal. Families heading on vacations, business travelers typing on laptops, kids tugging at their parents' hands while my life felt like a spy thriller I never signed up for. On the plane, Grayson leaned toward me. His voice was low, steady, practical. Once we land, we'll set up surveillance on the Ellison house. Catherine has lunch with friends on Thursdays. That gives us a 2-hour window when Mark Thomas will likely be alone. That's when we'll make our move. And then what? I asked, my voice tight. Then, Grayson said, you confront him. You ask why he faked his death, why he set you up, and most importantly, where the money is. I turned to the window, staring at the clouds below. What do you say to a husband who has lied for nearly 4 decades? How do you speak to someone who built your entire life on betrayal? I didn't know. When we landed in Chicago, we rented a plain sedan and drove north to Lake Forest, an upscale suburb lined with towering trees and sprawling mansions. My chest tightened as we turned onto a quiet street. There it was, Mark's, or Thomas, '-house. It was massive. A Tudor-style mansion with manicured lawns, perfectly trimmed hedges, and luxury cars in the driveway. I felt sick. While I had clipped coupons and carefully managed our budget back in Connecticut, he had been living like royalty here. We parked down the street. Grayson lifted a camera with a telephoto lens, scanning the property. That's her, he said. Focusing on the front door, a woman stepped outside. Catherine. She was beautifully dressed, elegant, carrying herself with grace. She climbed into a white Lexus SUV and drove off, heading toward her lunch, completely unaware that her husband's other wife was watching from just 100 yards away. Ready? Grayson asked, starting the car. No, I admitted honestly. but let's do it anyway. My body shook as we pulled into the driveway. The world blurred for a moment. I felt like I was watching someone else's life, someone else's choices. We walked up to the door. My hand lifted before I could stop it. I pressed the doorbell. Footsteps approached. The door opened, and there he was, Mark alive. He looked different, slightly grayer hair, thinner, but it was him. Standing there in casual slacks, a blue shirt, and a glass of scotch in his hand, like it was just another day. His expression shifted from annoyance to shock to something like fear. When he saw me, "Susan," he breathed, color draining from his face. "Hello." "Mark," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough. "Or do you prefer Thomas now?" His eyes flicked past me, landing on Michael and Grayson. I saw the calculation immediately, the way his mind started spinning, always looking for an angle, an escape. "You'd better come in," he said finally, stepping back. "Before the neighbors see." I stepped across the threshold into his other life. The house was perfect, polished hardwood floors, modern furniture, expensive artwork. Family photos lined the walls. Photos of him smiling with people I had never met. His other family, his other world. I turned to face him, fury burning in my chest. "We have a lot to discuss," I said. "Starting with why you're not dead, and why you decided to frame me for your crimes." He closed the door behind us, his face unreadable. "It's complicated, Suzanne. I've got time," I shot back. "According to my calendar, you've been dead for 8 months. So this conversation is already long overdue." The silence in that living room was crushing. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. For months I had cried over his grave, replayed our memories, mourned a man I thought was gone forever. And now here he stood, alive, calm, like he had just come home from work. "Complicated," I repeated, my voice trembling with rage. "You fake your death, vanish from our lives, and leave me to deal with the police and the banks breathing down my neck. You plant fake accounts in my name, enough to throw me in prison. And all you can say is complicated." Mark or Thomas, or whoever he was, now set his glass down on the coffee table. He didn't flinch at my anger. If anything, he looked tired. "You wouldn't understand," he said softly. I took a sharp step toward him, my finger pointing straight at his chest. "Try me. Because right now, the only thing I understand is that the man I loved for almost 40 years is a liar, a criminal, and a coward." Michael stood beside me, fists clenched, his jaw tight. "Tell her the truth, Dad. All of it. No more games." Mark's eyes flicked to his son, and for a moment, guilt seemed to flash there, but it was gone just as fast. He sat down in one of the leather chairs, like he was the host of this insane meeting. "Fine," he said at last. "You want the truth. Here it is. I was in too deep. The firm wasn't enough anymore. I had clients who wanted more than safe investments. They wanted shortcuts, faster results. I gave it to them. Offshore accounts, shell companies. At first it was just bending the rules. Then it became breaking them. And once you start, there's no way out." "You had a way out," I snapped. "You could have told me. We could have faced it together." He shook his head slowly. "If I told you, you would have left. And I couldn't let that happen." A bitter laugh escaped me. "So instead, you faked your death and framed me for everything. That's love." His expression hardened. "It wasn't supposed to go that way. You weren't supposed to find out. The plan was simply vanish. Everyone assumes I'm dead, and the accounts stay hidden. You'd live off the life insurance, never suspect a thing. You'd be safe. Safe." My voice cracked. "You forged my name on accounts worth millions. That's not safety. That's a death sentence. He leaned forward, his tone sharper now. Those accounts were leverage. Insurance. If anyone came after me, they'd go after you instead. They'd think you were in on it. That kept them off my back. The words hit me like a punch. He had used me as wife, the mother of his child, as a human shield. Michael's face turned red with fury. Do you even hear yourself? You threw Mum under the bus to save your own skin. You let her grieve, let me grieve, while you played happy family here. You disgust me. Mark's eyes narrowed. Careful, Michael. You don't know the kind of people I've been dealing with. If they knew you were involved, Michael cut him off. Don't you dare act like you were protecting us. You were protecting yourself. Grayson, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His presence filled the room, steady and commanding. Let's cut to the chase, Mr. Ellison. Where's the money? Mark's eyes flicked to him. And who exactly are you? Someone who knows your whole game, Grayson replied calmly, and someone who's been hired to make sure Susan doesn't end up in prison for your mess. Mark smirked faintly. Hired muscle, huh? Try me, Grayson said evenly. Where's the money? Mark leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. He seemed almost amused now. If I tell you, what happens then? The feds come knocking. The people I laundered for come hunting me down. No, that money is the only reason I'm still alive. It's my bargaining chip. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but strong. That money is blood money. You built it on lies, on destroying our family. And now people are threatening me because of it. Do you even care? For the first time, his face faltered. A shadow of something remorse crossed his features, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. I did what I had to do, he said firmly. No, I whispered. You did what you wanted to do. The room went silent again. I could feel the weight of the years pressing down on me, the anniversaries, the vacations, the little moments of tenderness that I thought were real. All of it tainted now, corrupted by this man's selfish choices. Michael suddenly slammed his hand against the wall, startling all of us. I can't do this. I can't stand here and pretend this man is my father. My father died the day he chose money over his family. I reached for Michael's arm, trying to calm him, but before I could speak, the sound of tires screeched outside. Grayson moved instantly, peeking through the blinds. His voice was tense. Black SUV, 3 men inside, not friendly. Mark's face drained of color. They found me. Michael looked at him coldly. Good. Maybe you'll finally face the consequences. Grayson barked orders. Everyone away from the windows. Back room now. We hurried down a hallway as pounding erupted on the front door. A voice shouted, "Open up. We know you're in there." My body shook with terror. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was life and death. Mark grabbed my arm suddenly, his grip firm. Susan, listen to me. They'll kill all of us if they get inside. But if I give them the money, maybe they'll let you go. I yanked my arm free. The only reason they're after me is because of you. The front door crashed open. Heavy footsteps stormed inside. Grayson pulled out a gun, motioning us toward the back exit. Move. We scrambled through the kitchen, the sound of voices growing louder behind us. My heart thundered as we spilled out into the backyard, running across the lawn toward the trees. Shots rang out. The crack of bullets split the air. Michael grabbed my hand, pulling me faster. Anna screamed somewhere behind us. Grayson fired back, covering our escape. We ducked into the woods, branches whipping at our faces. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but fear pushed me forward. Behind us, The men shouted orders. They were chasing us. Somewhere to my left, I heard Mark running too. Even in this chaos, part of me wanted to turn, to face him, to demand answers. But survival screamed louder. We ran deeper into the forest, darkness swallowing us. Bullets still echoing in the night, and as branches tore at my arms and the ground blurred beneath my feet, one thought cut through all the noise. No matter what happened tonight, one thing was clear. The man I had loved for nearly 40 years was gone, and if we survived this chase, I was going to stop him once and for all. The night swallowed us whole as we stumbled deeper into the woods. My breath came in ragged gasps, each one burning in my chest. The sound of branches cracking under our feet was drowned out by the shouts of men chasing us. Every step reminded me of how unprepared I was for this. I wasn't young anymore. My body ached, my legs screamed, but fear pushed me forward. Grayson led the way, moving with purpose, his gun steady in his hand. Michael kept a tight grip on my arm, dragging me faster than I thought I could move. Anna was just behind us, her face pale in the moonlight. And then there was Mark. He was running alongside us like he belonged there, like he hadn't been the cause of this entire nightmare. I wanted to scream at him to stop, to turn back and face the men he'd brought into our lives. But all I could do was keep running. We reached a small clearing where the trees opened just enough to reveal an old dirt service road. Grayson raised his hand, signaling for us to stop. He crouched low, listening. The men's voices were closer now. One shouted, "They went this way." Another answered, "Fan out. Don't let them get to the road." Grayson cursed under his breath. He turned to us, his voice sharp and commanding. "We can't outrun them. We need to buy time." "Buy time?" I panted. "How?" "There's a maintenance shack about half a mile down this road," Grayson said quickly. "We get there, we barricade ourselves in, and I call for backup." "Backup?" Michael asked, disbelief in his voice. "You mean the police?" Grayson shook his head. "The police can't help us here. These men have people in law enforcement. We can't risk it. I have contacts who know how to handle situations like this." My stomach twisted. Everything about this was spiraling further and further out of control. We started down the dirt road, moving as quickly and quietly as we could. But every snap of a twig made me flinch. Every rustle of leaves felt like a threat. Suddenly, headlights cut through the trees. A black SUV roared onto the road ahead of us, blocking our path down. Grayson shouted. We dropped to the ground as bullets ripped through the air. Dirt flew up around us. My ears rang with the deafening cracks of gunfire. Grayson returned fire, sharp and controlled. Michael pulled me into the ditch at the side of the road, shielding me with his body. Anna crawled close, her hands over her ears, eyes wide with terror. Mark pressed himself against the dirt, his face grim. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The gunfire finally stopped. The SUV door slammed. Heavy boots hit the ground. They're pinned. A voice shouted, "Move in." Grayson fired again, forcing them to take cover. He turned to us, his face tense. "We have to move now." "How?" Michael demanded. "They're blocking the road." Grayson pointed toward the thick trees on the other side of the ditch. "Through there. Stay low. Don't stop." We crawled through the mud, the branches tearing at our clothes, until we reached the tree line. Grayson gave us the signal, and we bolted. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I kept going. Behind us, the men shouted and cursed. More gunfire cracked through the night. We stumbled into another clearing and there it was. The shack, it was old, weathered, barely standing. But right now, it looked like salvation. inside. Grayson barked. We rushed in. The shack smelled of rot and damp wood. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and broken tools littered the floor. Grayson shoved a heavy wooden beam against the door, securing it. "Help me with the windows," he ordered. Michael and Anna scrambled to push broken boards and metal scraps against the openings. I sank onto the floor, my chest heaving. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold them still. Mark stood across the room, watching all of us. He looked strange in this setting, this man who had lived in mansions, dressed in fine suits, now crouching in a rotting shack like the rest of us. Grayson pulled out a satellite phone from his bag. He dialed quickly, his voice low and urgent. "It's Grayson. We're compromised. Lake Forest, off the service road near Mill Creek. I need extraction now." I couldn't hear the other side of the call, but whatever was said made his jaw tighten. He hung up and turned to us. "Double quotes, help is on the way," he said, "but we need to hold them off until then." Michael grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the corner, gripping it like a weapon. His eyes were fierce. Anna stayed close to me, whispering, "It's going to be okay. We'll get out of this." But her voice trembled, betraying her own fear. Mark finally spoke, his tone calm but cold. "They won't stop. Not until they get the money. You're wasting your time trying to fight them off." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe you'd like to tell us where it is." Mark smirked faintly, "Even in this chaos. And give up the only leverage I have." No, I wanted to scream. Even now, with our lives hanging by a thread, he was still thinking about himself. Before I could say anything, the shack door shook violently. A man's voice shouted from outside, "Give us the old man, and we'll let the rest of you live." Grayson raised his gun, aiming at the door. His voice was steady. "Nobody moves." The pounding grew louder. Splinters flew as the men tried to break through. Michael looked at me, his eyes desperate. "Mom, what do we do?" I didn't know. For the first time in my life, I had no answer. The door cracked, wood splintering under the force of the blows. Grayson fired a warning shot through the gap, buying us seconds. "Stay back," he barked. The men cursed, retreating for the moment. But I knew they'd be back. Mark leaned against the wall, his face pale. He looked at me, and for just a second, I saw the man I had once loved. "If they get inside," he said quietly, "they'll kill you first. Because of those accounts. They'll think you know everything." His words chilled me, because deep down, I knew he was right. I clenched my fists, staring at the man who had betrayed me more than anyone else ever could. If we survived this night, one thing was certain: Mark's secrets would no longer be his to keep. The pounding on the shack door started again, harder this time. Each blow made the wooden beam groan, dust falling from the frame. My heart hammered in my chest, knowing it wouldn't hold much longer. Out of the way. Grayson barked, his gun aimed steady at the splintering wood. Michael and Anna pressed close to me, shielding me as best they could. Mark stayed back, silent, his face grim but unreadable. The men outside shouted again. "Last chance. Hand him over, or everyone inside dies." Grayson's voice boomed back. "Come and try." Seconds later, the door gave way. The beam snapped, the wood cracked open, and the first man lunged inside. Grayson fired. The gunshot echoed like thunder. The man crumpled to the floor. Another rushed in, and Grayson shot again. The shack filled with smoke and the sharp sting of gunpowder. "Go," Grayson shouted, pointing toward the back wall. Out through the window. Michael smashed the glass with the metal pipe, shards flying. He climbed out first, then reached back to pull me through. Anna followed, her hands shaking but determined. I turned at the last second. Mark was still inside, frozen, staring at the men pushing in through the door. For a split second, our eyes met. He looked human, vulnerable. But then he grabbed something from the floor. Heavy wrench hands swung at one of the attackers. "Move, Mom," Michael shouted, yanking me through the window before I could process what I'd just seen. We landed hard on the damp ground outside. The woods stretched before us, dark and endless. Behind us, the shack shook with the sound of fighting, shouting. More gunfire. Grayson dove out of the window last, rolling onto the ground and pulling me up with him. His jaw was tight, his eyes blazing. "We can't stay here. Move." We ran again, branches whipping at our faces, our lungs burning with every step. Anna stumbled, but Michael caught her, dragging her forward. I pushed myself harder than I thought possible, every ounce of strength fueled by fear. Behind us, the shack lit up with fire. Flames licked the night sky, smoke billowing through the trees. The men had set it ablaze. "They'll use the fire as cover," Grayson growled. "Keep moving." We crashed through the woods until we stumbled onto a small creek. Grayson motioned for us to follow it downstream, the water masking our tracks. We slogged through the freezing water, my shoes filling with mud, my legs screaming in pain. Finally, we collapsed on the bank, hidden beneath a cluster of fallen trees. Grayson crouched low, his ear tuned to the night. "They're still searching," he whispered. "But the fire will distract them for a while." Anna's voice shook. "What about Mark?" He stayed behind. I swallowed hard, staring at the flames in the distance. He made his choice, but inside, my emotions were a storm. I hated him for what he had done, for betraying me, for endangering all of us. And yet, some small, stubborn part of me couldn't stop wondering if he was alive in that inferno. Michael sat beside me, his hands trembling as he tried to steady his breathing. "Mum, we can't keep running like this. We need a plan." Grayson nodded. "I've got extraction coming, but we need to hold out until they arrive. We'll head toward the old quarry, about 2 miles east. Wide open ground, easier to defend." I wanted to scream, to demand how my life had turned into a nightmare of guns and running and secret quarries. But instead, I forced myself to nod. What choice did I have? We moved again, slower this time, every step deliberate. The forest was quiet except for the distant crackle of fire and the occasional shout carried on the wind as we walked. My mind spun with questions. How much money had Mark stolen? How many lies had he told? And worst of all, how many more secrets were waiting to come out? Hours seemed to pass before we finally reached the quarry. The moonlight reflected off the wide open pit, casting eerie shadows along the jagged rocks. "This is it," Grayson said, scanning the horizon. "We hold here until my team arrives." Michael and Anna sank onto a boulder, exhausted. I joined them, my body aching from every muscle. Grayson stood watch, his gun never leaving his hand, and then, out of the darkness, a figure appeared. For a moment, my heart stopped. It was Mark. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with soot, but he was alive. Somehow, he had made it out of the burning shack. He stumbled toward us, breathing heavily. They won't stop," he gasped. "You don't understand. These men, they're bigger than you think." Grayson aimed his gun at him instantly. "Don't move." Mark raised his hands. "I'm not your enemy. But if you want to survive this, you need me. I'm the only one who knows where the money is. And if we don't use it, they'll never stop coming." Michael shot to his feet, rage flashing in his eyes. "You expect us to trust you after everything you've done? After what you put Mom through?" Mark looked at me then, his eyes desperate. "Susan, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking you to listen. Please. I stared at him, my heart torn between fury and the smallest spark of something else, curiosity. Maybe even the faintest shred of hope that the man I loved wasn't completely gone. But before I could answer, the sound of engines roared through the night. Headlights cut across the quarry. Black SUVs. More of them. They found us, Grayson growled, tightening his grip on his gun. Get behind me. This is going to get ugly. The SUVs screeched to a halt, doors flying open. Men poured out, armed and ready. The moonlight gleamed off their weapons. And there we were, cornered in the middle of an empty quarry. No more running, no more hiding, no more hiding. It was time to fight. The quarry was silent for one heavy moment, like the whole world was holding its breath. The black SUVs lined up at the edge of the pit, their headlights cutting through the dark, trapping us in beams of harsh white light. Michael grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. Anna stood frozen, her eyes wide. Grayson crouched in front, his gun raised, steady as stone. And Marky stood tall, his hands half lifted, as if he wasn't sure whether to surrender or bargain. Then a man stepped out from the middle SUV. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark coat that swayed with the breeze. His face was hidden in shadow until he stepped into the glow of the headlights. Sharp jaw, slicked back hair, cold eyes that seemed to pierce through all of us at once. Well, he called out, his voice calm but dripping with menace. The ghost himself. Thomas Ellison. Or should I say, Mark Harris. I flinched at the sound of Mark's name in that stranger's mouth. Mark's jaw tightened. Vargas, he muttered, his tone filled with something I had never heard from him before. Fear. The man smiled faintly. You cost me a lot of money, Harris. My employers don't like being made fools of. 7 million, gone. And then you vanish into thin air. That's not how this works. Grayson shifted slightly, gun still trained on Vargas. If you want him, you'll have to go through me. Vargas tilted his head, amused. And who might you be? Someone who doesn't miss, Grayson said coldly. The men behind Vargas raised their weapons, and instantly the air grew heavier. I could almost taste the danger, thick and suffocating. Vargas chuckled softly. This doesn't have to get messy. Give me Harris, and the rest of you walk away, alive. Michael stepped forward before I could stop him. His voice cracked with fury. After what he's done, take him. He deserves whatever's coming, I gasped. Michael, but my son's eyes stayed locked on Mark, filled with a rage I couldn't soften. Mark looked at him, his face pale, and for once he didn't argue. He just said quietly, I'm sorry, son. Vargas spread his arms. See, even your own boy agrees. Hand him over, and this ends. Grayson shook his head. No, if you take him, you'll kill the rest of us anyway. That's how this game works. Vargas's smile faded. Then you've made your choice. His hand lifted. The men raised their rifles. Down. Grayson shouted. Gunfire exploded, echoing off the stone walls of the quarry. Bullets sparked against the rocks, sending shards flying. We dove behind a cluster of boulders, dirt spraying around us. My heart raced, my ears rang. Michael pressed me flat against the ground, shielding me with his body. Anna clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Grayson returned fire, every shot precise, controlled. 2 of Vargas's men fell instantly, but more swarmed forward. Mark crouched low beside us, his face twisted with panic. We can't win this, he hissed. They'll keep coming until we're all dead. Then talk, Grayson snapped. Where's the money? Use it to bargain. Mark's eyes darted around, frantic. It's hidden, offshore. in a series of accounts only I can access. But if I give them the codes, they'll still kill us. Vargas's voice boomed across the quarry. Harris, you have one chance. Walk out now with the access codes, and maybe I'll let your family live. Maybe. Mark swallowed hard. His gaze flicked to me. Susan, what do I do? I stared at him, my fury boiling over. You should have thought about that before you destroyed our lives. Michael's voice cut in, fierce and cold. No deals. No codes. We fight. Vargas signaled again, and more bullets rained down. Rocks shattered. Dust filled the air. Grayson cursed under his breath, switching magazines with quick precision. Then, suddenly, headlights appeared at the far side of the quarry. More vehicles. For a split second, dread shot through me. We were surrounded. But then Grayson's face lit up with grim relief. My team, he muttered. Black jeeps roared into the quarry, their engines growling. Men in tactical gear jumped out, moving with deadly precision. The firefight turned chaotic, the air filled with the roar of gunfire and shouting. Stay down. Grayson barked, pushing us lower against the rocks. I covered my ears, praying it would end, praying we would survive. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually the gunfire slowed. Vargas's men scattered, retreating into the night. Some jeeps chased them down, others held position, and then silence. Grayson stood slowly, scanning the scene. Vargas was gone, vanished into the darkness. Bodies littered the quarry floor. Smoke hung heavy in the air. You're safe, Grayson said finally, lowering his gun. For now, I sat up slowly, my whole body trembling. Michael helped me to my feet, his eyes darting around as if he couldn't believe we were still alive. Anna clung to his arm, her face streaked with tears. And then there was Mark. He stood a few feet away, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. You see now, he said softly, why I did what I did. These men would have killed us all. I had no choice. I stepped toward him, my voice sharp. No choice. You had a choice every step of the way. You chose lies. You chose greed. You chose to make me your scapegoat. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. Don't you dare stand there and pretend you were protecting us. You were protecting yourself. And now, because of you, we're standing in the middle of a battlefield. Mark's face crumbled. But I didn't let myself feel pity. Not anymore. Grayson approached, his eyes locked on Mark. This isn't over. Vargas will regroup, and he'll come back stronger. The only way we end this is if we get to those accounts first. Mark hesitated, then gave a small nod. Fine, I'll give you the codes. But after that, I disappear. Forever. I shook my head firmly. No, you don't get to disappear again. You're going to face the consequences. All of them. Michael stepped closer, his voice steady. She's right. You're done running, Dad. For once, Mark didn't argue. He just lowered his head, defeated. Grayson's men began loading equipment back into their jeeps. The night air was still heavy, filled with the smell of smoke and gunpowder. As we prepared to leave the quarry, I looked at Mark one last time, and I realized something. No matter what happened next, the man I once loved was gone. All that was left was a stranger. The ride back from the quarry was quiet, too quiet. The sound of tires on gravel and the occasional crackle of Grayson's radio were the only things filling the silence. I sat in the back seat of one of the jeeps, Michael on one side of me, Anna on the other. My hands trembled in my lap, though I tried to keep them still. Mark sat in the vehicle ahead of us, flanked by two of Grayson's men. His head was bowed, his shoulders slumped. For the first time since I'd discovered he was alive, He looked less like the powerful man who'd controlled 2 lives, and more like a prisoner on his way to judgment. I should have felt relief. I should have felt justice beginning. But all I felt was hollow when we reached the safe house on the outskirts of the city. Grayson pulled us into a heavily secured garage. His team moved quickly, sweeping the area, checking every corner. Only when he was sure it was safe did he motion us inside. "Rest," he ordered. "We'll move again in the morning. Too risky tonight." Inside, the safe house was plain. No family photos, no decorations, just cold walls and locked doors. It felt nothing like home, but at least it was safe. Michael guided me to a chair at the table. Anna brought me a glass of water, her hands shaking as much as mine. We were all exhausted, but none of us could close our eyes. Grayson pulled a chair to the center of the room and gestured for Mark to sit. 2 of his men stood guard by the door, weapons ready. "Time to talk," Grayson said flatly. "The accounts, the codes, all of it." Mark looked up slowly, his eyes sweeping across the room until they landed on me. For a moment, his expression softened. "Susan," he said quietly, "do you really want this? Do you really want to see what I've done laid bare?" I leaned forward, my voice sharp. "I already know what you've done. You lied to me. You betrayed our family. You stole from innocent people and painted me as your cover story. The least you can do now is tell the truth." Mark closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Then, without another word, he began. He listed account numbers, bank names, offshore branches in the Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore. He rattled off codes and passwords like he'd rehearsed them 1,000 times. Grayson wrote it all down, his face unreadable. By the time he finished, the room was silent. "That's everything," Mark said finally. 7.4 million. Every cent accounted for. Michael slammed his fist against the table, making me jump. "Do you even hear yourself? $7 million. Stolen, laundered. Hidden while Mum was at home clipping coupons and wondering why you worked so hard. You let us live small while you built 2 lives. To families." Mark's face tightened. "I didn't do it for the money. Then why?" I demanded. He looked at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. Regret, shame, or just another layer of lies. "Because I was good at it," he admitted. "Better than anyone else. And once I started, I couldn't stop. It wasn't about the money, it was about the power. The thrill of building something nobody else could see. A whole world hidden in plain sight." I stared at him, my stomach twisting. "So our marriage, our family, our life together, that was just cover for your thrill?" His eyes dropped. "No, that was real. You were real. Michael was real. I loved you. I still do." Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have made me your scapegoat. You wouldn't have left me to rot in prison for your crimes." Mark had no answer. Grayson stood, pocketing the papers. "This is enough to bury him. Federal charges will stick. Fraud, embezzlement, laundering you, name it. And the best part is, with these accounts exposed, Vargas loses his leverage. He'll have to go underground. So, it's over?" Anna asked softly. Grayson shook his head. "Not yet. But soon." Michael looked at me, his voice low. "Mom, what do you want to do? Press charges? Walk away? It's your call." I stared at Mark, the man I had married at 23, the man I had trusted for nearly 40 years, the man I had buried once already, only to discover he was alive and worse than dead. "I want him to face the law," I said firmly. "I want the world to see him for what he really is. Not the loving husband, not the respected businessman. The liar, the thief, the coward. Mark's face crumpled. For once, he didn't argue. He just lowered his head, accepting the fate he had created. Grayson nodded. Then that's what we'll do. The rest of the night blurred. At dawn, federal agents arrived, escorted by Grayson's team. They cuffed Mark, read him his rights, and led him away. He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He just looked at me one last time, his eyes hollow. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I turned my face away. Michael wrapped his arms around me as the agents' cars pulled out of the driveway. Anna stood close, tears sliding down her cheeks. "It's over," Michael murmured. "It's finally over." But as I leaned against my son, I realized something. It would never truly be over. Not for me, because the man I had loved most in the world had been a lie. My marriage, my memories, my whole life, it all had cracks now. Cracks that could never be sealed. And yet, I was still here, alive, stronger than I thought I could be. Days later, after the dust settled, I returned to my home in Connecticut. The house felt different now, not haunted by his memory, but freed from it. I walked into Mark's office one last time. The papers were gone, the safe empty, the secrets stripped bare. I sat at his desk, the place he had built his empire of lies. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Michael and Anna visited often, checking on me, making sure I wasn't alone. And slowly, little by little, I began to believe in life again. Mark Harrisaw, Thomas Ellison, or whatever name he chose, was no longer my burden. He was the government's problem now. I picked up a framed photo from the desk. It was of Michael as a boy, grinning with missing front teeth, his arms wrapped around my neck. That was real. That was mine. And no amount of lies could ever take that away. I placed the photo back on the desk, stood and walked out of the office. This time, I closed the door behind me, not with grief, not with fear, but with finality. Because I was done looking back. The past belonged to Mark, but the future, my future, was finally mine.